Hi guys, this is Dan from Magic Pachinko Restorations. A little short video here on wiring of a different harness than an Esogen, and this is one that a lot of folks call me on, and I keep saying someday when I do one of these I'll write all this information down. So today's the day I'm going to do a video on it. This came off of a Sankyo machine, and it had a plug here, a white connector plug that would have plugged in at the parlor. So there's a red, a green, and a white. And over here is the ball out micro switch. This is the ball out light. This is the fuse. This is the jackpot light, and this is the jackpot leaf switch. Though the way that most of these things were wired in the parlors is that DC current is just a big loop. Starts here, ends here, and goes through the circuits, and it's broken by the switches. Typically, they also wired in a third wire or sometimes a fourth and fifth. It gets kind of crazy, but this one's pretty simple. In this case, it's the green wire, and this green wire would have been hooked to a control panel in the parlor, and when the ball out light came on, this would send a signal back to the parlor owner and let them know that they had to switch, put some balls back in the machine. So this is my 12 volt transformer. So I initially said, well, I'm just going to try red and white because I traced this. And this is one thing that is a good thing to learn, is if you simply trace your harness wire, you've got red here, it goes to the fuse, which is very typical. And then it comes out of the fuse, and here it splits. One goes to this bulb, the other one goes to this bulb. Then again, that's fairly common. It just takes power and gives it to each bulb. Now, if you follow this return, if you come up to the bulb with red, and you follow it back to green, and then it splits and goes up to the switch, and then the switch comes back to here. So using the green wires, it's red power, green to the bulb, to the switch, to white and back. So this, I assumed, was one complete circuit, red and white. So to test it, I put my 12 volt transformer wire on here. And I immediately got the ball out light to come on, which is what you would expect because there's obviously no balls involved. But this switch would have sat like this in the machine, and when it was down, the light should go out, not stay on. Okay? Now I'll show you something. If I disconnect the white and go to the green, we'll get the same thing. The ball out light will come on. But if you notice now, when I work the switch, the ball out light doesn't go out. So that's, for home use, that's not the proper way to do it. The proper way to do it is light comes on, light goes off, on and off. Okay, so I'm going to just leave that one off. Now, this is the jackpot light. So you come over to your jackpot light and squeeze the two leaves together, and you've got your jackpot light working. And okay, so we've got both light bulbs working. Now, again, if I, for example, I know this is return and this is power. If I were to grab these two and put power to both of them, it creates kind of a weird situation where nothing works. So, whoops, something just worked. Oh, that's weird. That's shorted. We don't want that. So, red and white with power turns on the ball out light, turns off with the switch, and this turns on the jackpot light. So this is the proper way to put power to it. We can just ignore the green wire. You could cut it off, but you're going to cut it off down here where it branches, because it does play a part in the rest of the harness. So don't go cutting it by the light bulbs and stuff. Just ignore this this portion of the wire. So because this had a plug on it, which is now gone, what I'm going to do, I buy these little printed circuit board things at a science shop. They're just full of holes, and they've got the little copper traces on them, so you can put a wire and solder it anywhere. So what I'll do is I'll take my pigtail that I'm going to plug into my power supply, and I will just arbitrarily pick 2 spots on this circuit board and solder that in. Okay, so this is positive, this is negative. Keep in mind, in a DC circuit, it really doesn't matter. So this is my positive wire, or red to red, if you will. I'm gonna put this in this board so that it's close enough that I can solder these 2 together, and I'll do the same thing with the white. This one's really simple, and I'll just get that in there. I'm going to bring them in from this side, but they'll solder on this side, and really that's all there is to it. So now when I plug my power supply in, I've got power in return going to the lights, right? And then what I'll do, I might cut this in half, I don't know, and use the other half on another machine. Or what I'll do is I'll just put this up in the, put this up in the upper right corner on the back side of the machine where the typical power connection was, and you just use little spacers underneath it and just screw it right to the board. So it makes a pretty clean harness, and when I get all done, I'll include it in this video. Thanks. Okay, so we're back. Before I show you what I did, I just want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about soldering. If you don't know how to solder, and you're going to continue to work on pachinkos, it's a very good idea to learn how to solder. I was lucky. The many years I spent at Kodak, I learned to solder and did quite a bit of it. So it's a pretty easy task for me, but a lot of people just don't understand the concepts of how to solder. I'm sure there's plenty of videos on YouTube that can explain that to you. One suggestion that I do have is if you go to Amazon and give yourself a little spending spree, this is something that's very, very useful to me. And I'm sorry about jerking the camera around on you. Where are we? There we are. Okay. This is a soldering station. My son-in-law got me this a couple of years ago. I use it probably every day. This is a sponge for cleaning the tip of the solder iron. You need to keep that very clean. These are just the little helping hands to hold stuff. Solder paste, again, it makes soldering easier and keeps your iron clean. And this is the solder back here. I always get rosin core solder, which essentially puts this stuff inside of the roll of solder, makes soldering a lot easier. And this is my soldering iron here. And one thing I want you to notice, I got to see if I can get it. Yeah, right there. If you notice, the tip of the soldering iron is real shiny. That's what you need to have if you're going to do any soldering at all. It's called tinning, and you have to do it right when you buy your soldering iron. You tin it. It's just a matter of getting it hot and then applying solder to it, and it will take that shiny look to it. And then every time I'm done soldering, I re-tin the soldering iron by simply letting a whole bunch of solder melt onto the end of the tip like that, and then just turn the soldering iron off, which I'm going to do now because I'm done. I'll just turn that off. That solder will harden, and then it will melt again when I turn the soldering iron back on. So just a couple of things on how to take care of solder. Wire strippers. You have to have wire strippers. There's a whole variety of wire strippers out there. I actually like these a lot. These allow me to strip different gauges of wire. Pretty controlled. I like these, so this is my preference, but there are other types out there. I also used some heat shrink tubing. That particular batch came out of Harbor Freight. Heat shrink you can get all over the place. And you need some sort of source of heat. This is just this is an it's not an industrial hair dryer. It's a heat gun. It blows hot air. That's its purpose. So I have one of those also. So what I've done here is I did cut that long green wire off, and I cut it right where the two green wires are junctioned and then split off. I just cut it here, and then I put the heat shrink on it just to make sure that that didn't get pulled apart, because they're soldered, and if they got yanked on, it might undo the solder. And then the other thing that I did is I made this little connection board. So you can see that my pigtail, sorry, I gotta look at the video. My pigtail gets soldered into the board. I'll just call it power and return. Power and return. And then I took the power from the harness, put it into one hole away from this, and the return, again, one hole away from this. And then on the back side, these holes are not connected, but if I solder one and then the other one, like these two fingers, solder one here, solder one there, the holes are so close, it's pretty easy to get a bridge of solder to go across. So what you're seeing here is a bridge of solder that essentially is soldering this wire and this wire together so that they make a good electrical connection. Okay, and again, this will just get mounted up in the corner. And what I'll more than likely do is probably hot glue these wires down to the board, simply because I don't want them bending back and forth. It's old wire. If it takes too much bending, it will break, and then the electrical connections are bad. So I'll just put some hot glue there to keep it from moving now that I've got it where I want it. So now, if I take my pigtail, plug it into my 12 volt, we're back to where we were, where the ball out light comes on and it works off the switch, and the jackpot light will light up the jackpot bulb, which is what you want. Okay? So that's it. That's how you do it. Pretty straightforward and simple. Probably a fair amount of stuff that you need to learn, but it's not difficult. So on a Sankyo or any non-Nisogen machine, the colors may be a little bit different, but the concept is still the same. It's just power in to the bulbs, to the switches, back. And when the switches are broken, the power's off. When the switches are made, the power's on. I mean, it's simple. It drove me nuts when I first started to get into this, because it took me a while to get it to sink into my brain. But if you just keep telling yourself, it's simple, it's a circle broken by a switch, and you should be good to go. Hope this helps you out. Thanks.